believe we're live.
Yeah, we live now.
Okay. Welcome, 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 family, to the Empower Hour. I am Al Kumar.
I am Hanifa.
And welcome to the Empower Hour, where we come to you each and every Monday evening, normally at 8 p.m. It's a little after 8 right now. To talk to you about impactful topics of discussion that affect our everyday lives. And today will be no different. We ask you to come on in, join us, join the discussion, conversation, put your points out there. We're going to get them up, talk about them. Or if you choose to just listen in, we welcome that as well. Tonight's discussion is about gender wars, airing our dirty laundry out there when we get upset and angry and frustrated at each other and we lash out and we show this as a public display for all the world to see, feel, hear, watch, laugh at. And what does that do? What does that do to uh, the collective consciousness?
Yeah,
And yeah,
that's a good way to
so,
put that question.
huh?
I said that's a good way to put that question. The collective consciousness.
The
Yeah.
collective consciousness. What does that do overall when we do that? How you
Mhm.
feeling, honey, for tonight?
Good, Alcom. Much better now. How are you feeling?
Super fantastic. Very peaceful. Don't mind us, family. It's kind of an inside thing. Don't mind us. What do you think about this whole gender war we find ourselves?
Um,
A
hmm,
lot of us, I should say. We gotta put that specification there because it's really not everybody. It's a lot of us doing what we're supposed to be doing, but
and maybe we should preface this by saying we're a little late.
yeah,
We were supposed to be doing a different show, so this is kind of like a spur of the moment thing. So
yeah,
we kind of wanted to scratch the surface of what we're going to our panel, because we should be having a panel next week. What we are going to be discussing more in depth next week. So feel free to leave your comments in the comment section. We can see you. We want to hear from you. We want to just have a conversation, before we get into our panel discussion next week. So Alkama, you were asking how I'm feeling about the so-called gender war.
yeah,
So-called gender war.
yeah.
I think that there's a lot of frustration on both sides. You know, there is. I see it in so many different ways. I feel like the when I think about the feminine and masculine and how long we have been under a predominantly masculine, almost like a masculine dominated world. And I don't want to even say society. I think that the feminine is has been and is rising to take her rightful place as well. However, I've always said I do see that happening, but I do not think the feminine's intention is to rise to overthrow. I think the feminine is rising to bring back the balance,
Mm-hmm.
because there was a time when the feminine was, kind of had her power, and then you have patriarchy, with the movement, the move of colonialism, all of these things where people's culture and way of thinking and way of doing was completely changed. I don't think the feminine disappeared. I think she kind of went underground. And I personally think that she's just rising back to her rightful place, which is really alongside the masculine, which is to bring balance. But I personally think that we're trying to fix it from the outside in,
Mm.
and that's just going to create more violence and chaos. I think the balance that we're really looking for has to start within us. And like I said, just understanding what each of those essence, those energies, right? Those the attributes of both. What are they? And then once you can identify where they are, you can see how they show up in your own life, right? Now, right. So that's really how I feel about that. The way that we're going about it, it has to happen. What's happening has to happen for the balance to come back. Because think about this. We talk about white supremacy all the time, right? And we talk about like white domination and power. And we say this all the time. These people are not just going to give up their power.
Mhm.
It's no
Mhm.
different if you have a male, a masculine dominated society, right? That's the masculine is not just going to surrender. Like it's going to be a fight, okay? It's going to be a fight. So I think we just need to be able that we can have that fight, but it's how we have it, right?
Yes.
How we have it, and that's what we're speaking about. So I think we're going about it the wrong way, but I think it is an absolute necessity, right, for these two things to come together and have the conversation. I don't know that we know how to do that without fighting, because we're really fighting within ourselves first. And
Yeah.
it's, yeah, that's what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like growing pains. And when we don't recognize it that way, the way you just so eloquently described it, when we don't recognize it that way, it becomes, like you said, an outward battle.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hear you say that you know who you know want to give up them privileges, you know, even, you know, so where I'm hearing you say is even the black male has certain privileges as it relates to a relationship with a black woman.
If we are connected to the world, if we're connected to the society, I think that sometimes we mistakenly believe that things happen to us in a bubble, right? The things, the diabolical acts against Black people is not happening in a bubble. The society that we found ourselves in is evil at its core,
Mm-hmm.
at its root. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not happening in a vacuum. It's not happening in isolation, right? It's happening because you are connected to that. So if patriarchy is ruling, right, and that is just the subjugation of one specific demographic gender, right, for the empowerment of the other. So you're subjugating one so that the other could be empowered. Yes, all of us. If Black women are being affected by it, then of course Black men are too. But that's just my opinion. This idea of like, now, do some are some black women taking on this extremes to everything, by the way, which is what I mentioned, where I said like the masculine is rising, it is so that she can take her rightful place and bring the balance. What's happening is in that rise, you have some women who are on the extreme end of it, and they don't want to have anything to do with men. You understand what I'm saying? It's more so like, let's do away with men, F men. And
Feminism.
yeah, you know, and I'm also seeing conversations happening with men now where it's almost like, I just ain't messing with these women. And I'm like, are you into men?
Or the men who will leave their communities altogether and go in search of a woman from somebody else's clan.
Right. There you go. Right. So there's a lot, you're right. There's a lot of like, there's extreme on both ends. So
Mm-hmm.
there's that, the extreme in with patriarchy would be, I guess people would say misogyny. But then there's also misandry as well, you know, which is on the other side, which would be on the feminine side. So yeah, for us to think it doesn't affect us, I think that's silly. Because you hear people say that all the time, like Black men don't benefit from, like I hear that all the time, and I'm just like, I don't know if I completely agree with it. They might not benefit in the capacity that their white counterparts do, right? They can't reap the fullness of the benefits of that the way that they do. But of course, there's a little bit of benefits there. Of course, there is, unless you're completely disconnected from the society.
Yeah, when I hear I hear you say that, I think of like men who find relation with more than one woman.
Mm-hmm.
I could imagine that would be more of a benefit to a man than it would be to the woman.
And that's a small example, but look at if a woman do that. Look at how she's ripped apart versus these. See, you just gave a really small like example of, yes, you do benefit as a man. Forget the Black part for a minute. As a man,
Right.
you are benefiting somewhat, because there are some things, and then as women, there are some men would see some benefits that women are in enjoying under quote unquote patriarchy, so-called patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, we have full reign of our emotional expression. You know what I'm saying? What our men do not, right? So what does that do to them if they have no outlets? Why are they dying faster than us? Right? So the same thing that they can actually benefit from is actually also stifling them and making them sick as well. So yes, we all benefit in some way, but sometimes we don't want to look at how, because we have to hold that mirror up and be honest about it. And not only that, some of us are benefiting it in a way that we're enjoying it, and we're not willing to give up certain things, or to even look at ourselves and say this isn't right. You know what I mean? So that's all it is, in my opinion.
So why the frustration though, you think, Hanifa? Where's all the frustration stemming from, where we see so many cutthroat responses to anybody from the opposite sex that says anything constructive? You know, a criticism, I'm saying, I'm sorry.
No,
And you get so much vitriol, so much backlash, and then becomes a war, a straight out war of words. So where is this pent up frustration and anger stemming from both sides?
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an individual problem, though. I really do. I think that a lot of us, we come to social media with our hurt and our pain and our traumas and our unresolved issues, whether they be mommy, daddy, family issues. And social media is like a place for people to just kind of release, in a sense, without really having to think about, because if I don't see you in person, it makes it a little bit easier to insult you. You know, if you're all the way across the country, you know what I mean? It makes it a little bit easier to take my frustration out on you. I think a lot of us are hurt. I think a lot of us are, and this is why it's important to listen to both sides as well, and not dismiss or minimize their concerns and their hurt and their pain, because men have pain. All Black men have some pain that was inflicted on them by Black women, and our Black women have pain that was inflicted on them by Black men. And so now you're talking about, and I'm talking about from when they're children. A lot of us are carrying wounds from our childhood. You know what I'm saying? And they're climaxing at this point in adulthood. And so now we're having these conversations, and it's just a bunch of hurt people. I would dare say a bunch of hurt children trying to have adult conversations.
Tanisha had a really good point. Hey, Tanisha, she says, I often feel like Black men, like white women, are only jockeying for power equal to white men. What's your thoughts around that?
What do you think about that?
She said, we want our relationships to look like white folks. I think we don't know any other way. I think if you were born, bred, raised, went to school, watched TV, and you know, we are Europeanized. Every last one of us, some more than others, some unbeknownst to them, but all of us are in this society. And when you in Rome, you do what Romans do. You know what I'm saying? We speaking right now from a language that is English. We're not English people. So I say all that to say, when she said we want our relationships to look like white folks, I think we don't know no other way. It's until we grasp the African way, the way of our ancestors, the way of our root, the way we used to behave prior to us being institutionalized in this society, How was our relationships then? How did we rectify and solve our issues then? Who did we go to for counsel and advice then? You know what I'm saying? I think until we really start to Sankofa our journey, which is to go back and fetch the information to bring it forth into our current day, until we really decide to do that, we don't have any other way. What other means do we have to go by but what we have been conditioned and trained to know?
I think it's important for us to be very careful in when we are talking about going back and taking. I think we need to take the principles, right? The principles of ma'at, the principles of balance, the principles of respect, right? Mutual respect, those. But I think we also have to bear in mind that our ancestors, a lot of their way of thinking was based on the environments that they were in. Okay, so for example,
where did those principles come from? Where?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like certain principles are eternal, right? Like they gonna go, they can go over centuries, like over a life, like different lifetimes, right? I'm just saying, like, it's very, when we talk about going back and doing it like the African way, I'm saying this for the people who be like, well, I don't want to live like that. I think we're talking more so about the principles and what the societies look like as far as men and women because of those principles, right? So now we live in a technological age. I actually think that we have space to create something new, not what do you call it, dismissing the things that worked and can still be applied from our ancestors. But I also think that we are creative enough to look at the space that we found ourselves in today and like, okay, what would work best for us to progress us forward? You get what I'm trying to say? Because I'm very careful with, like, some things are just antiquated and can't be applied to the current times. That's really what I'm trying to say. Go ahead.
I feel you. But I just want to reiterate, even the principles that you just described of my aunt has origination. And so they didn't, you know what I'm saying? So they came from back then.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, they can be applied, but I think that has been our Achilles heel, is attempting to fit another way of life into something that's been fine, but we just don't have those principles anymore.
Okay, let me give you an example without even going that far back. Okay, there's a lot of conversation about how women should function. The best example that comes to my mind right now is people are looking for women to function the same way that women function when they weren't allowed to work. That is impossible. We don't live in that time anymore unless you deliberately decide not to work as a woman, right? And you're only responsible for household duties, then absolutely. But we don't live in the times anymore where women are not allowed to work. So a man cannot expect, he works, she works, and still she comes home, takes care of the children and the home. That's like double the work at that point. You get what I'm trying to say? If that's what you want as a man, then you have to be in a position where you look at your lady and say, yo, it might be better for us and for our children if you stay at home, at least maybe for the first 5 years of their life, whatever that conversation is.
Right.
But what's happening is that you have men who are saying that, no, I need you to help me pay the bills, so you have to work, and still have the expectations, right, of that of a housewife. That doesn't apply in that situation. Do you understand what I'm saying? Women function different because they didn't have certain rights that they have today. So that's what I'm saying. We've got to be very careful in what we're saying when we say, well, like, I know what you're talking about. You're going back. I'm talking about, let's go as recent as when women weren't working, because people bring up, oh, you guys are not built like your great grandparents or your and I'm just like, yeah. They live in a totally different time, because if I had no other way of being employed and I had to depend on you, I probably wouldn't have a strong opinion about nothing, because you are the breadwinner. I need you.
Yeah. I still say, because you even said it, that the core principles, The
Yeah.
core principles is what we've gotten away from.
But
So
go ahead.
even the modern woman, if you want to
Yeah.
call it that for lack of term better words, even for the modern woman and man, I think we've gone left field because we've gotten away from the core principles.
Which is it's mutual respect, because the reality is even
Which is my art.
right.
Which is my art. And my art is the core principles of a time that we, that we gotten away from. And that's why I say Sankofa, because
That's what I'm saying. You're talking about
those core principles to bring them forward in order to have a healthier lifestyle, even in the modern time.
I agree. You're talking about the principles that we've abandoned, in other words, in a sense. Yes. I'm looking at not, and that's what I said before I started, is that the principles, yes, and that's why I brought up my art. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to the conversation around a certain way of living, I think we have to really acknowledge that we are living in different times, right? And so there probably is some adjustments that need to be made. However, those adjustments can be made still with our respect for each other intact, right? Our love for each other still intact. Those adjustments could be made without the need to tamper with those principles. We don't have to change those principles to adjust to the time. Respect is respect is respect is respect. Okay, in 3064, respect gonna still be respect. Okay,
but we've gotten away from, though, honey.
When cars start to fly, respect gonna still be respect.
Absolutely.
And by the way, you still gonna have the essence of a woman, and a man is still gonna have the essence. It's not gonna go anywhere. So yes, I agree. I am agreeing with you on that. I'm not disagreeing. I was speaking more to the idea that there are people have these expectations of this is what a man looks like and this is what a woman looks like based on, right, a blueprint from the 1920s or something like that. And I'm like, that's impossible. Yeah.
Which is what Tanisha is saying. She said we want our relationships to look like white folks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
men and women, by the way. Men and women, it's both of us. We have unrealistic expectations.
She says in recent history, the last 100 years, we didn't have those core principles.
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah, that's my point.
And it's getting worse. And it's getting worse.
It's getting worse because we have got away from the honor, the respect, the love, and communication, effectively and without, being harsh. But to your point, all that stems from pain.
Yeah, these conversations, Alchema, like you were saying, like when you're watching them online, there's a lot of pain. There's a lot, like if you pay attention, there's a lot of pain and projection of that pain onto each other. You understand what I'm saying? I am not the Black woman that hurt you, but I remind you of the Black woman that hurt you. And therefore, because remind you of the Black woman that hurt you, I must be the same as the Black woman that hurt you. And that is not true.
Back too. And I have to, and I'm gonna have to hurt you too.
Yeah.
Because you are a reminder of me. You are a reflection of her to me.
Yeah. So there's a lot of pain involved. And like I said, it's very important for us to not dismiss each other's pain. Yeah. I really it's important for us to encourage each other to get help around that pain, because at the end of the day, you have misdirected anger, right? It is not me you're really angry at. So I need you to get to the root of it, right? So you do not take your anger out on me and I don't take my anger out on you, you know? Here's how I explained it. I was talking to my friend the other day and I was explaining to her like programming and how the brain functions, right? As far as programming. So you have some programming that happens within your brain. Hey, when this happened, this is how you respond. And that happens enough time, repetition. We all learn through repetition, right? That's elementary school. Mm-hmm. And so there's a programming that happens. And so I was explaining that I had to go back and think of what my programming has been around, let's say, men. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And as somebody who grew up in the housing projects, for example, that is not the healthiest environment. It is not the best environment to get your lessons on what manhood and womanhood is. It just is not. It's just not. Okay. So you get a lot of different messages, right? You receiving those messages, and not only that, receiving those messages, and you also adjust so that you could survive those type of environments. Okay. So now you grow up and you're an adult. That programming is still there. It is still there. And so when you get into relationship now, okay, I always talk about tools. That the programming is the tools I'm talking about. What tools are you bringing into your relationship to build it? If all you know to do, all you know is drama, all you've seen is men equals drama. That's all you've known. That, let me tell you something. If that's all you know, you'll meet a peaceful man and you'll create drama. Yeah. Just so that you could be comfortable and be seen and heard in the relationship. It is programming. So a lot of it now means like, okay, these tools aren't working here. I need to figure out how do I acquire new tools, and how do we reprogram? How do we reprogram? Repetition. Repetition, choosing to do the best thing over and over and over again until it becomes second nature. Just like that toxic response became second nature to you, which is now showing up in your relationship. It's programming. A lot of it is programming.
Yeah, and we know when it's not working, when the pattern just continues to repeat over and over again. So you find yourself meeting the same people, over and over again with a different name. You know what I'm saying? Over and over and over again. And until we recognize that that's what's happening, we'll continue to point the finger at the other person, as if the other person is at fault. Yeah. But you because you haven't sat down and analyzed the situation enough to a point to realize that, well, wait a minute, what am I attracting? Why am I attracting? I believe we attract who we are. A lot of people disagree with that, but as far as I can see, that's always been the case. For my own personal life, you attract who you are, and it's like when, and I think you realize that better. You have a better understanding about that concept when you start changing things about yourself. When you start moving in a different energy and space and sphere, and start realizing that you're attracting different energies and different people, then you understand. It's like, oh, okay, now because I've worked on some things about myself, and now my attractions have changed. But you keep repeating the same, seeing the same over and over and over again, then it's hard for you to even decipher or understand that concept, because you don't have nothing to pull from. All you have is the same continuous source of people and information.
And how you speak about it, Alkema, exactly what you're saying. Like you're saying, you're attracting what you're speaking about too. For example, women going around out here talking about, I don't need a man, right? I don't need a man, right? Now, they clearly are getting men because they still want that ding ding, okay? But it's like, I don't need a man. I don't need a man. The reality is that you are going to attract a man that don't want to be needed. I don't need to depend on a man. You will attract a man who is not dependable.
And when you say all men ain't shit,
you're gonna attract men that ain't shit, because it's almost like a self-prophecy. You're creating your own reality. That is the truth. Like, so I always tell people, like, we have this thing, especially as Black women, where we play down a lot, like a lot of what we desire and what we want, right? Because we don't want to appear weak and needy, right? Because Black women for a long time, and of course, without even having to get into the history, has had to kind of fend, right, for themselves, right? And so to be able to protect and all of that, these things like protection and stuff like that, those are masculine principles, okay? And so you have to now lean on your masculine heavily, okay, as a means to survive, okay? And so, but here's the thing, you leaning on your masculine that heavily, and you out here talking about you want this kind of man. The man you describing is very masculine, by the way, right? And I can tell you right now, he come into your space, it ain't gonna work.
Mm.
It ain't gonna work because you have two men. And I'm talking about energies here. You have two men. It's not gonna work, right? But women who tend to be a little bit more like aggressive in that sense, they're thinking they want a man that might be slightly more aggressive than they are. But the only way for their relationship to work is if they're in a relationship with a man who is the opposite of that. Because there are men out here who lean heavily on their feminine. And that does not mean they're effeminate. And it doesn't mean they're gay. It just means they're a little softer around the edges.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Yeah. But them, those are the men, that women who lean heavily on their masculine, they don't really want to be in relationship with those type of men because they end up being pushovers. They don't want pushovers. But in for you to attract that type of man that's a little bit more masculine or whatever, you're gonna have to kind of like get back into your feminine in order to do that, because no man that's fully leaning on his masculine is coming in there, and you know, you're not gonna run the show. That's just not, you know what I'm saying? It's not gonna happen. And I'm not saying he should either, but I'm saying that it's not going to be balanced because there's going to be a clash, you know. But I wanted, well, Alchem, I wanted to speak to what you just said as far as like being dishonest. We're not honest. We're not honest. As I'm gonna speak as a woman, we're not honest about what we desire. You have a lot of us out here talking about, well, you know, I don't want this type of man. And it's like you're afraid to say what you really want. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to appear like you press for a guy or something like that. No, if you literally want to be married, then I'm gonna need you to talk like that. I'm gonna need you to actually say, no, I want to be married. Then we could start to discuss then what type of man you want to be married to. And then you could be honest about that too. But we're too busy trying to play this down all the time. Not really. I mean, if it happens, it happens.
That's the ego. That's the ego. And again, that's stemming in fear, because you fearing that you're going to be at a loss of something if you are vulnerable. You know, without understanding it's the total opposite.
Yeah.
You let your guards down and become vulnerable is when you're open. You're open to receive. Alma says this is a very important topic. We have to understand our own behaviors, thoughts, and patterns first, which we are not socialized to do. We just got finished saying that. Yes, Alma, I agree with that. Yeah, we're socialized to have guards up. We got boxing gloves up. And you know what I'm saying? It's not customary right now for us to be just open and frank and honest about what we really want. You know?
We have a little bit more patience for dealing with Black women pain than we do dealing with Black men pain. Yeah. You know, it's almost like we do not, and I'm big on, we really need to rehumanize our men, because we treat our men almost, or we look at them and we see them almost as not human. You know, there's no space for them to have a moment of like, you know, I don't even want to use the word weakness, but a moment to actually feel, you know, and they're already in a world that dehumanizes them. They don't need that from us as well. You know what I'm saying? So for us, we're a little bit more forgiving, like, oh, that happened to you. That's why you're the way you are. I'm so sorry. And the same thing happened to a Black man. And it's like, well, you know what? You're adult now. No, you're adult now. Like, that was in the past. You're responsible for your actions. You know what I'm saying? We'll build whole institution. No, not whole institution, whole classes around addressing Black women's pain.
Yeah.
Go look for the ones that address Black men pain. It's like finding a needle in a haystack for the most part. Are they out there? Yes, but they're very few and far in between. Yeah. And I really, and I think personally, we literally have to advocate, not just our men, but we also have to advocate for that as well. Because the reality is this, I don't want to heal by myself. I want to heal with our men because we need each other.
That's just how it would be, like having an apple that's rotten on one side. you got one side you can eat off of, but the other side rotten. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Yeah, we got to deal and hold together holistically. And that's the whole full circle.
And be gentle with each other, have compassion. Think about, like, do you really think that if there's a war going on, and let's say, let me see an example. Let's say Syria. I'm just using an example, guys, so don't kill me. But let's say Syria, and there's a war going on. You really think that this man is going out to fight, or there's the enemy like attacking them? You really think he coming back into his house, and you sitting on talking about, well, what time did the meeting done? You know what I'm saying? They're trying to plan strategies, and you mad. You just nitpicking stuff. No, honestly, and I'm like, we can't say that we are in war and we function like we're not. Because I always say this: we keep talking about we in war, then we have to really approach our relationships the same way. Our level of compassion and patience has to be high. It has to be twice as much, because the reality is we have a mutual enemy. We have an enemy of both of us that don't want to see anything good come from us. We can't afford to be fighting each other, because the reality is this: at this point, then, if we're gonna fight each other, the enemy is looking like, well, these heifers ain't gonna procreate because they can't even get along enough to sleep in the same bed. So we ain't even got to worry about them. Let them destroy each other from the inside out.
And you know what I'm thinking as I hear you talk? I think a lot of that behavior stems from individualism, even in our relationships. We come into our relationships very self-centered, and so when things don't go exactly according to how we want them to go, then we cause a commotion.
Where does that come from? Where do you think that comes from?
Individualism.
No, I'm saying, where do you think that selfishness that we bring into relationships come from? Almost it's like a sense of entitlement.
Yeah, I think that's just what we've been taught. We've been taught along the way. Me, I, mine's. I got this mine, and you can see it a lot with, even when we come together. We don't get married anymore. You know what I'm saying? I know everybody. I have my own, for a long time, had my own views about marriage, but have changed since. But again, even a lot of those things are in, our own bank accounts, and you know what I'm saying? This is, me, my, I. And the whole, the collective coming together really and meshing really together it's not like it used to be. It's not like it used to be. And I think it's just learned behavior. It's learned behavior. When everybody else around you is doing the exact same thing, you tend to fall in line and do it too. I think, I could be wrong. What do y'all think? But I think that stems from a lot, because I hear it a lot too, especially when you get into some of them circles where these educated women are and stuff, and you at least have to have a agree to match mine in order for me to even look your way, or you got to make a certain amount of money and da 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 da. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of that is just, we're not even coming in from a frame of reference of, what am I bringing to this table? It's, what I'm saying? What am I offering that's going to make this relationship a better one? You know what I'm saying? It's, what can you do for me? And if you can't match, my credentials, then later for you. I think that's selfish. That's selfish, in my opinion.
Yeah. And what we bring to, even as men, as far as provision, we, money is important. I'm not even gonna pretend it's not.
But it's the value system, though.
Yeah, like, right.
And on that.
And provision, I think we have to broaden our definition of what provision looks like, because then we end up in situations where a lot of us are provided for, but we are neglected emotionally. We're neglected as far as the person, like, meeting other needs other than financial needs of ours. Like, not the person is, the man is out there working, making sure, like, a roof over your head, the family's taken care of, and all of those things, and that's it, because that's all he feels he has to do. Like, that's it, his job is done. And then you're stuck with caring for the children most of the time. You're stuck with You know, you have to lean heavily on your girlfriends, you know, as it's to get any outings and, you know, those type of things. Like provision has to be more than, and this comes from communication, of course, honest communication with each other. I really just think that some of these terms that we even use as far as what our needs are, we really need to start redefining them or taking a closer, you know, look at them. Like, what does this really mean in real times? In real time, what does this even mean? So if we're saying that women are out earn, like black women are out earning black men, right? The black men that you're looking for that's making so much more than you.
Reality.
So then you have to start to discuss what else besides what they make. What are the real deal breakers? Because I want to believe for black women, money is not at the top of the deal breaker list. We out here pretending it is, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not, because if that was the case, we would not have the highly educated women who are out there ending up with the, as I'm going to put in quotes, like people say, the Pookie and Ray Rays. That would not be the people you go for then, if that's the case. Do you see what I'm saying?
No.
So it's more, it's no, I'm saying that we're trying to say that the deal breaker for, let me just put it this way. The media is making it seem like most black women, this is what's happening right now, that most black women are only concerned about how much a man makes.
Okay.
That is a deal breaker, the number one deal breaker for most of us. And I'm saying that's a lie, because all of us can look around us and know that is a lie. Because we know we know a lot of women who are making more than the men they're with. Now, whether the relationship work or not, at the end of the day, she still got into that relationship with that man making less than her. So that's not the top deal breaker. We have to stop letting this small percentage of women who have reduced men to dollar sign represent the rest of us. All of us mindset is not like that. And we're not saying that you're going to come into the relationship broke and busted and I'm just going to provide for you. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that majority of us out here, that's not true. We are not reducing men just to dollar signs and cutting them off because they make $40,000 a year. A lot of women are willing to work with men. That's a fact, and we see it. Whether it works or not is another story, but we see it. Just like men, a lot of men out here are willing to deal with sisters that they ain't got all their ish together.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So it's the conversation. I think what we're doing is like the interracial relationship conversation that the media tends to like make big. Really is right. We know that majority of black men and black women are married to other black, you know, people. But when you look at the media, you would think otherwise, right? I think it's the same thing. This conversation that's happening to where it's like, no, this is what black women do, reduce us to a dollar sign. I don't think that's true for most of us, Alkama. Do we have a lot of other stuff that we need to work on as women? Yes, yes. But I don't think
that's not the major issue you saying.
Yeah, I don't think the number one deal breaker is that, I'm not giving you a chance because you make way less than me. Nah. I don't think.
What do you think about the whole concept of it of being more women than men, and so the balance is off numbers wise, and so women can't find any good decent men because there's so many of them. There's not a lot of them out here to choose from. The pool.
It's not a lot of. If that's the case, if that's the case, now it's not a lot of us good women out there for them to choose from either. What are we saying? I mean,
some people suggest that the incarceration rate, the homosexuality rate, couple that with some other things, and then that the pool gets the homicide rate, and you combine all of that, and the numbers kind of change up a bit.
So I usually say, what are you looking for? You're looking for, if let's say I am Canadian, am I look okay, let's say DC. You from DC.
Mm-hmm.
Are you looking for a black man from DC? Does he have to be from DC? And if
Mm-hmm.
you say no, then that expands out to Maryland. So
Mm-hmm.
are you just looking for a black man that lives in Maryland? You say no, then we could expand further out. We're gonna go to Virginia, we're gonna go to Pennsylvania, we're gonna go to Delaware. You see how that works? So what I'm saying is like when people say that, I don't buy it because we're only the minority in this country.
Mm-hmm.
We're the majority globally,
Mm-hmm.
right? Black people, just one. And then secondly, I'm like, you talking about black men. This planet, like, is flooded with black men. They are all over, girl. They are all
Yeah.
over. And perhaps you can travel far and wide to find your beautiful black man. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like most people that say that, it's really because they really need to expand their thinking around finding a black spouse, honestly speaking. But
Okay.
here's the thing, Alkama. If we outnumber them and the men are complaining and saying there's not enough of us good ones out there, what is that saying? Because we outnumber them and they're still saying it's tough to find a good what's happening? What's happening is that both of us have issues
Yeah, no
that
doubt.
we need to work on. It's not just one person, it's not one gender. We both have issues we need to work on. And I think the individual work is important
Yeah,
before we enter into serious relationships. And let's say perhaps you're already in a serious relationship, the individual work is still important
yeah.
even when you're in the relationship, right? So you have two people, this 50-50 thing, half, you make me whole. I don't believe in that. Okay, I really don't. I'm gonna need you to come 100 so I could come 100%. Honestly speaking, that's the only way it's going to work. Because if you come in, if I come at 100 and you come in at 60, I'm gonna be pissed. Okay, I'm gonna be pissed because I'm gonna feel like I'm getting cheated. I'm giving 100 and you only giving 60. So people need to individually work on themselves. Get therapy, whatever you need to do, but really work on yourself. And to work on yourself, you gotta be honest with yourself as well. Where are you messed up? You know, you ever stop Alchemy been in something and you be like, dang, oh, I got issues.
All the
That
time.
ever happened to you?
All the time. Girl, too many times to shout. Yeah, I self-reflect. Oh, I'm sitting here self-reflecting as you talking, as you speaking. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the key. I think that is the key. Is the to when the information hits you, as opposed to floating around in your mind trying to figure out where to place that blame that you could roll around in your mind thinking, wow, this is that me? Could that be me? Possibly, and really sit with those thoughts, because that's when the realization comes into play. We block so much of that because we don't want to feel it. We don't want, it doesn't feel good to hear somebody talk, you know what I'm saying? And that's why I think a lot of the social media firestorms originate because of what I'm just explaining. It's like when somebody says something, you feel so uncomfortable that your first instinct is to lash out at them because they made you feel uncomfortable, but without asking why. Why am I feeling so uncomfortable about this information? What is it about what I just heard that hit me to my core that makes me so angry that I want to hurt somebody, even if it's just with my words?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But that is, I firmly believe that's the core of your being, the spirit world telling you you got some work to do.
Yeah.
You got some work to do. And the more you focus that pain outward, the less you're going to be able to heal yourself and figure it out and get to the root of it so you won't have to feel that pain no more. You know what I'm saying? Because if you get it and like, oh, well, that's why. Well, let me figure out some of these kinks, smooth out some of these ruffles, switch up some stuff a little bit. And so that won't be me no more. I won't have to feel those painful emotions anymore because I didn't work on that. But we don't do that.
long as you leave, and we're talking about relationship, but I'm talking generally, as long as we leave every situation without evaluating how we contributed to it going wrong, we're gonna always do it again and again. It could be a and I'm talking about we're talking about relationships, but it could be a simple situation where something within you told you, you know what, Alkema, don't connect with that lady. Just don't, right? And you still and you go against that within yourself, and then it blows up right in your face, right? Now you're gonna you if you leave that situation saying, you know, she was just nasty and and you don't go as far back as saying, but it started with my gut, with my intuition. If you don't acknowledge that you went against your inner guidance, then you are going to repeat that again and again. If you only become consumed with how it blew up and why it blew up, and you put all the blame on that woman, you are never going to get around to, but wait, it started with me going against my own gut. You will never grow. And that's what happens to relationships. People are jumping from relationship to relationship to relationship without owning their contribution to the relationship falling apart. I don't care if it's as small as when that brother asked you if you will marry him, your everything in your being told you to say no, and somehow you push your little two lips together, huh, to say yes. Okay, it could be as simple as that, to where you say, we should not have been married. You understand what I'm saying? It could be a situation where that man mistreated you the entire relationship. If you just leave that relationship and say he was just a cheater, and you never point out the fact that everything in you knew you shouldn't have married that person, you are still going to repeat it again and again, and you will never grow from it. That's the issue. We don't take personal accountability.
Yeah, and
Just
we don't,
go.
we aren't honest with ourselves.
We,
We are
we're
not
very dishonest.
honest.
Like you said, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. So it's like, who wants to sit there and be like, well, you should do this next time around? I'll tell you who wants to do that. People that are about their growth and self-development. People who are about their self-development spiritually, physically, emotionally. They're about that, facing those hard truths and saying, yo, oh my gosh, like, what was I thinking? Why would I, even do that to myself? And
Yeah.
that's where growth comes. Growth comes from finding the lessons in your experiences that didn't work out the way that you hoped that they would, because there's always something to learn.
Yeah, it's like the concept they say you die 1,000 deaths as opposed to one. So instead of going in, facing those pains, feeling, sitting in that pain, dealing with it, and then overcoming it once and for all, we go through this process of pain over and over and over and over again because we never do the work. Yeah, so it's like, it's this self inflicting abuse.
Yeah.
It really is, but we just don't realize that's what we're doing to
And,
ourselves.
and as Black people, we can't afford to just connect with each other out of entertainment, out of solely pleasure.
Yeah.
We have to connect with each other with purpose, with purpose. And
Yeah.
once we understand that, then we are a little bit careful in how we choose who to, I'm using the word mate here, to mate with, who we allow in our most sacred spaces. Okay, that would be your vagina, your pom pom, whatever y'all call it, who you allow in that space. Because if you are looking to connect with someone with purpose, then what is the purpose? Right? And that would really eliminate a whole lot, men and women, by the way, men and women. Okay, people have this idea of we over sexualize Black men. We really do. That's all Black men are out there. No, there are some brothers out there that want to build, that are looking for women, serious women, okay, who will come in and build with them, not judge them, not chastise them, not talk down to them like they're children, but to literally work with them like in a partnership and love on them. Like there are men, Black men out there who are looking for that. Don't let them, this media fool you.
True.
You
True.
know? So
Yeah. Yeah. Again, that stems from not being honest with what we want. men and women.
Yeah. Yep.
Men and women. And then so what happens is we walk around in a fantasy, a vision, of visions of sugar plums dancing on our heads. And we walk around with this vision of, you know what I'm saying, outside of reality.
Shout out to Disney.
Huh?
Shout out to Disney for their effortless, for their never-ending over. Like they walked us to death on the fantasy, right? They really did. This is how a man is supposed to show up. And if he doesn't show up like that, he's not a man. Like it's so ridiculous. And the princess, I like it's just a lot that we have to literally begin to like detox and deprogram ourselves first. And that's a big part of it too. We live in this society and we're constantly bombarded with these really warped and almost childish image of what relationships look like.
Yeah.
It's not reality.
And not realizing we're at war, and not realizing that our relationships, you cannot compare our relationships with nobody else. Nobody else, because nobody else has been through what we've been through. And so that looks different. You know what I'm saying? Them scars, them war scars, they look different. And see, what happens is, like Tanisha, going back to one of her good points earlier, but she said we want our relationships to look like white people's. I agree with that. That's, because, yeah, it's like, why don't you bring me flowers every night or every day? Or, you know what I'm saying? Why don't you, do the things that's what we're asking of our mate, because we see these depictions on the big screen and TV and our favorite reality shows and things like that. And so we see that and we look at that with awe and desire. And so we're trying to now we're going to try to make and shape and mold our significant other to look like what we see on television. But without understanding that our reality is different. Our reality is vastly different than that. And so when you're trying to paint this beautiful Disney picture and it don't come out like that, now we mad at each other. We've got little stuff like for instance, good example. I see sometimes people actually really get mad if their significant other don't get them something for Valentine's Day. You know what I'm saying? It's like, are you serious right now? You mean to tell me you ready to end a relationship because you didn't get a Valentine's Day gift? Well, that means a lot to me. And Are you serious right now, though? You know what I'm saying? Our reality is not the same as the depictions we see on television. And the more and more we try to contort them to look that way, the more dysfunctional our own scenarios become, because we don't take into consideration that we are at war. And this war it looks different, it feels different because it is different. And so we got to maneuver in that space.
Yeah, we can't. Alkema, you said what you just said is really profound, because and you mentioned, you brought up the TV a lot, right? We can't accept that. So you have Black people who are fighting for more Black faces on the television, right? Like fighting Blacks, like presenting Black people in a better light on television, like all of these things. So the programming, it's almost like we're in auto drive. I don't know that Black people get up in the morning and say, you know what, I'm going to do relationship like a white person today. You know what I mean? Right. So what happens is, again, it goes back to programming. So we are watching these movies and everything. And a lot of these movies are predominantly white people. Okay? White people. And so what we're trying to do, without realizing that we're doing, is we're trying to emulate white culture, which is the dominant culture in America. Okay? So
we ain't the only ones, by the way. But
right. So really what's happening is that people are trying to fit in with the dominant culture, right? But there's no fitting in if there's no room for you. What are you fitting into? There is no room for you. There is no assigned space. This is a space right here for Hanifa, and a space. There's no room for you. So you can't fit in where there's no room. So we got to let that go. But a lot of it is programming. So then now you show up in a relationship, right? You know what? Let me tell you something. I could care less for flowers.
Mm.
And I really believe a whole other woman is the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But we think that that's what we're supposed to like. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we were told that that's what you're supposed. I think a lot of us in our deprogramming,
Mm.
we'll find out that a lot of things, a lot of who we thought we were not.
Mm-mm.
It was us created in the image of those that we venerate and worship.
Of somebody else's likeness.
Society.
Jesus. So you saying we were created in another person's likeness and image.
Oh yeah, because if I'm looking at you, Alkama, as you're God in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? That means that everything that you do must be right. Everything that you do must be the best thing. Everything that you do must be the way that it's supposed to be done. So, like, I'm giving the example of flowers, like, and that's just one example. I'm sure a lot of women out there like flowers, okay? Whether it's them looking at it, the smell of it, whatever. I'm saying that as you begin to deprogram yourself as a woman, as a man, you are going to buck up against some things that were really just not just projected, right? But programmed into you. It is not really who you are. It's not really who you are. And so we are showing up in our relationships with a lot of like warped way of thinking and expectations of the other person. If you don't do this, then are you really a man? And this that you won't do, where are we getting that from? Who is defining manhood? Who is defining what a boyfriend, what a fiance, what a husband looks like? Who is defining this for us? Because it's not us. So where is it coming from?
And you know why I know you hit the nail on the head is I think of trends and how we follow trends and how do you mean to tell me half of the population like the exact same pair of jeans or like at the exact same time or like the exact same hairstyle at the exact same time or you know what I'm saying? That's when you understand that we really aren't operating in our own individual understanding of who we are because we all are different in our own unique way. But when when you see all these people doing the exact same thing at the exact same time, for me, that allows me to know that we're really not operating in
That's a good point.
in the core who we are.
That's a good
We're
point.
just all following along.
And how does that show up?
They have it.
How does that show up in relationships? You see exactly what you just explained. What's trendy? You see people do it all the time. Oh, goals. They're taking one picture and saying this is gold because this person is on vacation, right? That person haven't showed you the big cuss out they had in the hotel room before they made it to the beach. You got one picture of them on the beach and you're like, that's relationship goals. You know what I mean? So it's like what you just explained with like what's trendy. You know what I'm saying? This is what men are doing for their woman. And so if you're not doing it, not only are you not a man, now it makes me feel less of a woman. Yeah. You see how that works? This is psychology being used against us. Because they're people
we operate in being conditioned, being socially conditioned from the media. From the media tells you
there are people who
relationship should be.
There are people who study human behavior, psychology, and they take those things and they put it into our television programming, advertisements, or specifically advertisements. All of this is psychology being used against us. And when you start to like study certain aspects of psychology, I can guarantee you'll be like, wait a minute, that's the same as, oh my gosh, like somebody's really using the same tool against you. And I think that's what, for me, and this is a little bit off, but for me, even like, and I love psychology. My degrees in like I love, that's my lane right there. I think it's very important that Black people really not just study psychology, but understand how you can utilize that same psychology, right? That these people are using as a weapon of war against you, how you can use it to also defend yourself and educate your people and be able to arm them so that they can defend themselves as well. It's a tool.
Good point. Excellent point. I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's right. We got to turn it and spin it. Yeah. And the same, you know it works.
Yeah.
Clearly, you know it works. So it's just using it properly. You know, like some people say, all propaganda ain't bad.
Right.
All propaganda ain't bad.
Right.
It's just how you using it. If you're using it to scheme, connive, and manipulate like our enemies do, then yeah, it becomes a tool and a weapon of war for them to remain in power. You know,
as long as you see like you use the word programming is not a bad word. It's not. As long as we see programming as a white people thing and we see it as a bad word, we will never learn how to first deprogram ourselves and then reprogram ourselves. Programming can be used towards the good. It can be.
Yeah.
But they are using it to what for their advantage, to
right.
push their own agenda. So what if you could then take the power of your programming in your own hands, right? And how do you utilize that for yourself and your family? Programming doesn't have to be a bad word, but when you see it as a bad word and somebody is utilizing it against you, that's crazy. That's crazy. So I just wanted to put that out there because we talking about programming, but yes, that's showing up in a lot of our relationships. We're showing up as black shells with a lot of Eurocentric programming. We're relating to each other through the lenses of Europeans.
That's right. Keith said, Tariq said they got people studying our social media pages. Oh, no doubt, absolutely. No doubt. I'm not. This is why I'm on a page. I'm on a Black Girls Grow Gardens. Love that. That's my favorite Facebook page. And there was some European woman that actually admitted that she was there to study us. Man, you should have seen them sisters. They flicked off. They said, y'all if you don't get this out of here, you better who let her in. You know, but that tripped me out. I was like, wow, he right. They go studying us on social media pages. Yeah, because we are the creators. We are the creators. So whatever they do, you know what I'm saying? They have to come through us to get the magic pill. We hold the magic pill. We don't understand it in that way because we looking at them. They got it, so well manufactured down to a science, the manipulation that we really believe that we need them in order to, do a whole lot of the things that need to be done. When really, it's the opposite. It's the opposite. It's the total. They usurp our energy in order for them to remain in power. But I know we've strayed completely away from the topic.
Yeah, no. We can. It's fine. I was gonna also say that, like, for like Black women, we talk a lot, and we've talked about this on the program before, Alkema, about the feeling of not feeling protected. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, for me, the conversation now is like, okay, so when you have discarded of the Black man, who do you think is going to protect you? I mean, in all honesty, who do you think is going to do that?
Well, a lot of us have really been conditioned to believe that 911 and 911 is attached to the law. And that law.
When I say protection, I'm talking about generally. And I'm even talking about like a specific thing happening. Like the protection conversation has been happening. So there's a lot of women who they've divested, right? They've gone to the other side. Right. So it's sort of like, you know what, we're going to go over here to the white man because, they treat us better over here, And I just want to even say, like, that's a small population of Black women.
Black women.
It is. It is. And I've been in the comment section of some of those YouTube videos. And when I leave, I always leave trying to figure out, like, okay, how do we find a middle ground? Because I've been on the men who is bashing Black women, and I've been on the black women who are, and I've been in the comment section of both. And I always lead with, how do we find a healthy middle ground to this? Because we're about to take each other out. This is not going to work out for our good. So how do we find a middle ground for this? How do we create a space to where the sister that was hurt by black men from the time she was really young, how do we create a space to where she can come and heal that, so she don't think that all black men is her enemy? How do we create a space where the black men who have kind of been mistreated, right, and tossed aside and emasculated by black women all his life, and where is the space for him to come to where he don't have to end up on the other extreme of it, where everyone that's black and woman is marked for death? How do we create spaces, the middle ground? And there's not a lot of those conversations happening, because it's almost like you almost feel like you have to choose a side when you enter into some of these rooms. And don't get me wrong, even a broken clock is right twice. Okay, so there are some valid points, right, that are being made. Absolutely, no person is wrong 100%, just like no one is right 100%, right? So there are some things to take away, but how do we take away? How do we get those things, extract those things from the conversation, and create like platforms? And I mean, we do it here, but like we need more platforms and spaces where we can extract the things that are genuine concerns and have healthy, balanced conversations about them, without the aggression, without the violence, without the verbal.
What has worked for you, Hanifa?
Huh?
What has worked for you? What has been your own personal experience that allowed you to find yourself in a space of more healthy than the most?
Or for me, it's more like a lot of self-work. I would probably say a lot of it started when I left the church. I left the Christian, yeah, like that's when, because here's the thing, I think the idea of depending on this God to really purify and do certain things on me, once that was removed, I literally had to do the work myself. And the reality is that the learning of self really comes from the work that you do on self. That is, yes, because I'm still there, you know what I mean? But the more you work on yourself, the more you learn about yourself. A lot of us don't really know ourselves. We know what our religions tell us we are, who our religions tell us we are. Most of us, I'm talking from the Christian perspective, we were born in sin and shaped in iniquity, okay? Because the scriptures tell us that, right? We know what our spiritual guides, whoever they are, tell us, you know, we know what our families say about us and who we are. We know what our environments, we know what this society says about what and who exactly are you. And the only way for you to get to the bottom of that is to do a lot of inner work. So to answer your question, I'm still on that journey continually.
But you know, when I hear that about the church, the thing that comes to my mind is the people that I find that are the most, that need the most work, are the ones that are outside of the church.
I actually disagree with that. I think honestly, I honestly do. And I'll tell you why. I think that in, like, with our religion, and I say this as someone who was heavily religious, right? I think that there is now, granted, there is a fear that's there. For example, we're going to use Christianity since that's what we're talking about. That fear of hell is real. Okay, so that's what I think keeps a lot of people in line. However, when you get to the root of it, it's not the healthiest thing. Okay, so yes, that might be what you're saying, but no, not really. There's a lot.
When I also think about the family structure, the ones who, just based on observation, the ones who have the strongest family tie to keep their families more intact, seems to me, are the ones who have, you know, that are in religion.
Again, I can't speak for all religions, and this might not be true for everyone, but I think that what you're doing is you're observing it from the outside, and that's why it looks that way. And I say that because there's a lot that happens in the church that gets swept under the rug. Okay, we could use the Catholic Church, for example, the high pedophilia that's in that. You get what I'm saying? There's a lot of these things that happen, even in families where there's abuse that's happening, but divorce is a sin. So, and again, the fear of hell is real. I'm not saying this is true for everybody, because there is an aspect of really having that connection to a source outside of yourself, which people would say God. I think there's something to that. I don't necessarily think that you have to be a religious person to have that connection, though. I just want to be clear. And again, the idea of you are not moral unless you are religious is ridiculous. And so I have a problem with that as well. Like, some people think if somebody say, I don't really believe in God in that sense, that somehow they are morally bankrupt. I don't believe that either. But I think that there is something to be said when you are living to honor something greater than yourself, as far as the family structure. And yes, so I agree with that. But I wouldn't go as far as saying it is because they're in the church that these things are so. I don't know that that's true, because I've seen enough. I've seen enough to where the families look like they're intact and the children look well behaved and everything, but it's not the case. It's not. And that's, again, that's not true for everybody, but a lot of times it's not the case. It just looks that way. So I don't want anybody to chew me alive in the comment section. I just want to be clear on what I'm saying.
Not today. Good stuff. Nobody.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm trying to be careful in how I say that, because I don't want to say because you're in the church you're a hypocrite. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that oftentimes they have certain doctrines and dogmas that keep them in line, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't some deviant stuff happening behind the scene. It tends to be covered up way better. Okay. That's yeah. But I know what you're trying to say. You're trying to say that. Why don't you say what you're really trying to say?
Well, like I just mentioned, it just appears to me that those who seem to have a better handle on this relationship thing tends to be the ones who have a spiritual base. And like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know what I'm saying, worshiping white Jesus. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah. But I'm just saying those who have a spiritual base that are more connected spiritually tends to be. But then that goes right on back to where we started with the whole ma'at.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
Core principles. You know what I'm saying? So I think in a way, because I always, and I was used to be one that would shun anything that had to do with Christianity per se, because, you know, not necessarily religion.
Right.
I grew up as a practicing Muslim, you know, and so, and of course, you really never stir too far away from your base, I don't think, anyway. And so, anyway, long story short, I think I lost my complete train of thought. I said that to say, I think we have, anyway, I just lost my train of thought, but that's just been my observation.
I know what you're saying. It just appears to be that people who have that spiritual foundation. And I guess my addition to what you're saying is this: keep in mind that people have spiritual foundations outside of so-called religion. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say.
Right. Spirituality and religion is not one and the same. There are people who have spiritual connections and they're not affiliated with any one religion.
Yes, but I think yes. But what I was going to say is that I think a lot of what I see, we become a little distorted as it relates to spirituality.
Okay,
in my opinion, and I think that is really the basis of what we're talking about too. For me, I think that we get to a place where I'm God. Nobody can tell me nothing. And you know what I'm saying? And you know, you reading that book, this stupid book, throw that shit, burn it. That's worthless. You know what I'm saying? I think somewhere in that frame of reference is narcissism. And I think that when we start to not respect the forces that are higher than ourselves, we're getting away from ma'at. We're getting away from core principle. We're getting away from law, the natural law, because there's laws to this life. in this universe. And so we can't be out here. For instance, somebody said the other day, I heard, you could do whatever you want as long as you ain't hurting nobody. Mm-hmm. And I sat back and I thought about that. Mm-hmm. I said, that's dysfunctional. Mm-hmm. That's dysfunctional. When you get into a place like that, and when you start believing that you are the alpha and the omega and the everything, and that, you know what I'm saying, you can do whatever you want, and you know what I'm saying, somewhere within that you are breaking the laws of nature, because there's hierarchies in everything in nature, including our own beings itself. And so when you don't recognize and honor the source from which you came, then you open the door to all mannerisms of dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And I think that, to me, is where a lot of our dysfunction in our relationships stem from too, because we don't have that, we don't hold on to that rope of that the source that's higher than ourselves.
I don't think it's I would go, I don't know that I would go as far as saying it's narcissism, but it's definitely immaturity. And I say that as when somebody first come into a certain level of consciousness, mm-hmm. that type of passion that they have to ways like you just said, burn it, you know. I think as you mature, you realize that everything has its use and its purpose. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But that's maturity. Mm-hmm. Immaturity is burn it. You know, no, like let's be done away. But maturity says, I have you, all of it has use. Bring it. Bring it. Like you could start off as a person in black consciousness to where you only want to read black books. Mm-hmm. And then you start to mature and you realize there's information out there that's not necessarily written by people that look like you and I, that is still beneficial to people that look like you and I. That is maturity. It is a journey. So when people react like that to where it's like, I don't want it, you know, because it's grief. It's one of the stages of grief is anger. They are angry. They are upset. They feel betrayed. Okay. So let's burn everything down because I'm pissed that for so long I've been lied to, you know, so let's burn it down. But as you begin to go through your grieving process and you get to that stage of acceptance and coping, which I consider to be a little bit more mature, you're like, you know what? With that Bible I threw in the garbage, let me read some Proverbs. Let me read some Psalms today. You know what I'm saying? Because you realize that it all has purpose and it all has use.
You go back and get them pieces that didn't completely burn. You go get the pieces of the pages that didn't completely burn from the fire.
Oh, you purchase a new
piece them back together.
Yeah, you purchase a new one altogether. Because the reality is this, that there's a lot of principles in the scriptures, in the Bible, in the Quran, whatever you want to call, that if you look out to nature is applied, okay, without ever even having a Bible in your hand. There are people who believe in those principles who have never read a Bible.
Yes.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And they are using those principles to guide their lives. So again, I think it's a lack of maturity when people react like that. I've been there, so that's why I'm saying that.
Tanisha says church offers a structure for family. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not all bad. We want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but then when you look at the, you know what I'm saying, the whole thing, there is some benefits to structure. You know, so that's a good thing. It's structure of any kind. So if the church is offering some structure that other institutions are not, you know what I'm saying? If that's some, you know, a little, you know, some of our family units are staying intact because of that structure, then why would you want to destroy that? And where to go where? To come into the community where all of our relationships are in shambles. And I know
religion provides structure, period. That's pretty much what it is. That in a nutshell is what it is. It provides religion, period, provides structure for people's lives. That's why there are people who leave religion and years later they go back to it because it's probably the most in order they've ever felt in their life. You know,
that's not necessarily a bad thing, though.
No, I'm not saying it is. I'm saying that what we're talking about, structure, that's technically that's what religion does. That's what it is. It puts things in its proper place. And that's all it is. Like even in the church, there's a role that the woman plays, there's a role that the wife plays. This is scripture. This is scripture where they said the man is the head of the family. You know, it's Christ, the man, then the woman. That's scripture. Those things are in scripture. So even like I say, gives everything its proper place. So everything plays its role, even down to the children.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree with, I don't disagree with that. That structure is there for sure, that we are not seeing outside of those institutions.
Yeah. And where I think religion becomes the most dangerous is when what we choose to worship. What we choose to work. Like, you know what I'm saying? When you're looking at a picture of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed man as your God and Savior and waiting for this man to come back from the sky to save you, this blonde-haired, blue-eyed man, you know what I'm saying? That those type of things is to me what's the most damaging.
Mm. Mm. I guess I'm trying to see how how that translate over into the
The
relationship.
relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, no. I mean, I don't disagree with you, because if your God is white and you're black.
Because then you become a submissive part, because if we're in a war, but you know what I'm saying, but your religion tells you to, you know, love all people and turn the cheek and let them snap you on the next cheek, or take your coat off and give them your coat, and you know what I'm saying, you love your enemies and all those kind of things, then you become a sitting duck. You become a sitting duck. And now we know, we have no, based on evidence, factual evidence, that they took that book and used it in a way to make the slave more passive and submissive to its master. You know, they strapped scriptures, taught scriptures in certain ways and things like that. And I think to this day, a lot of us are still caught up in religion in that way, to where we really, you know what I'm saying, we really can't see our way out of it like a Nat Turner did. You know what I'm saying? To be able to save yourself or save your people by just looking at it from a different angle.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm making any sense.
There are some people that I have my, again, when we say church, it's so, that's so vague and it's so broad, because there are different types of church. There are Black liberation churches, you know, that teach certain things that you might not find in like a Catholic church or even a Baptist church. Like, so there are different like denominations just within the Christian church and so forth. But yes, I totally understand what you're saying, because if there are some people that won't take up arms even because of their religious beliefs. So I totally, they won't even defend themselves, you know, because of their religious beliefs. So I see what you're saying, where that could become, you know, dangerous.
And it becomes submissive. Like, let's take Martin Luther King. Let me go there. You know, and a lot of people, you know, we really hold that brother up to high regard. And I understand why, you know what I'm saying? But I think about his life and what he did. And somebody was mentioning how, you know what I'm saying, the batons is beating down on your head, and your first reaction is to sit there and pray while the police is beating your head with the batons, not even looking to defend yourself. And then look at how he went out. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I mean, I don't know. I guess to each is. So I think there's the dichotomies in that too. Maybe I'm just overstepping myself, because, you know, it's ironic, or it's interesting, I should say, how at the same time Martin Luther King was on the scene, Malcolm X was on the scene. Time. Yeah. I don't think that's by accident. You know, those dichotomies in our lives are real. And so I think there will always be those who, the lamb, those who take the position of a Martin Luther King, and versus the warrior type, those who take the position of that they put their hands on you, you send them to the cemetery. Direct quote from Malcolm X.
I feel like we're moving towards, not, it's not like right around the corner, but I feel like we're moving towards an age of that goes beyond either or,
Mm,
that is going to, where we're going to really begin to see how things can be synthesized versus them being polar opposites, or like you, or moving away from like duality. And when I say that, into oneness and how things can be synthesized, because as you were speaking, I was
mm,
just like, in the beginning I said we have to understand that it all serves purpose and it all has use.
mm,
I can actually believe in prayer, and I can actually believe in arming myself. Those two things can exist in the same space. It is just knowing when to use which.
mm.
You understand? We don't have to discard of one in favor of the other, right? So there are always going to be some of us who really believe in fighting evil with good, right? In other words, if they're aggressive, the only way to win is to be passive. There are some people that feel that way. You have to do the opposite of what they're doing, right? I think that there's a place for that. I think that there's a place for violence, even. Okay, and as far as defending ourselves, it doesn't always have to be either or. I can be a prayer warrior. The emphasis on warrior, meaning that when it comes time to fight, I'm gonna fight. But when
Right.
it's time to be at my altar, I'm going to be at my altar. These two things can exist in Hanifa. These two things can exist in Alkama. It's just knowing when to tap into them, because you don't want to show up in the summer wearing winter clothes, and you don't want to show up in your winter wearing summer clothes.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
going to be out for a rude awakening. So it's really just saying, which one do I need to tap into right now? And all of us have it in us. But some people end up choosing one over the other. I don't believe in people who constantly want a fight. No, because then you won't show up in a place that's about peace with your gun. And we having a peaceful conversation. If you don't take that gun off the table, so we gonna have this conversation without intimidation. There's a time and a place for everything. So this idea of it having to be one with the other, I find myself moving away from it and trying to figure out how can these things exist in the same space, because oftentimes, like you just said, it isn't necessarily that one is good and one is bad. It's just like, does this one make sense for this time that we're living in?
Good point, Juanita. Yeah, yeah, I feel that. I received that. I received. That's why I said the dichotomy of the Malcolm and the Martin at the same time. I don't think that was accidental.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that part
Yeah,
was certainly necessary. I certainly lean more towards one side than the other, but I feel you. I received
yeah,
that. It makes all the sense in the world.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. We have just been like, it's funny to just for this impromptu show that wasn't even planned.
Well, this was a good conversation.
Yeah, Tanisha say my bullets hit my target dead on when she prayed. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you too for adding Tanisha to the discourse. You've been great helping us tonight.
And
Religion focuses on doctrine, dogma over direct relationship with the Almighty. Yeah, 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 yeah. I get her. Some people, they do. They take. My pastor said. My pastor
yeah, yeah. Whoever the leader, whoever their leader is. Yeah.
said without ever feeling their way through, and that takes internal work.
But I wanted to say, because I know we're about to leave, in ref, like, you guys tune in next week, definitely, for our panel, our relationship panel, and just talking about the where do we go from here, as far as what we're seeing with the so-called gender war between black men and black women that's happening right now. I have hope for us. I think in the midst of all of this, there's a lot of growing and stretching that's happening on both sides. I think that there's a lot of us who are now looking in the mirror, and we're starting to try to do things differently, even no matter what age. I think it's important for us to figure this out, because we have some generations looking at us right, that is going to follow, and the things that we know are not working for the betterment of our community and for the progression and of our relationships, we need to begin to change them now, and we need to start teaching our younger ones, boys and girls, who will eventually grow up to be women and men who are going to also do relationship with each other. Okay, like yes, the music, the songs that's out there and so forth, I see no problem discussing those songs, right? Like what is it, like I think it might be Cardi B, Megan Stallion, like these people who are singing certain lyrics to where our young girls that are growing up are actually consuming these lyrics. Again, that goes back to programming. What kind of woman are these things going to produce? Same thing with the men. We've seen what some of those lyrics have done to some of our men perspective towards women. We've seen it happen. We've seen it happen. So we really have to try to figure this out. And the last thing I'm going to say is one of the things that I realized, and I'm learning this, when things get hot in Black conversations, everybody, a lot of people resort to Black folks can't do anything. Like people start to run away and get scared. For me, I kind of sit in it because I really feel that we are carrying so much that sometimes it takes a lot of like friction for us to actually get to the other side of it. But if we are so afraid of a little bit of friction and a little bit of conflict, we're never going to get to the other side. We're never go. If we just run away the minute some sort of conflict or friction arise, we're not going to get to the other side. These conversations are not going to be easy because there are going to be things said from both sides that the other side don't want to hear. Mm-hmm. But we can do it if we really push through and have the hard conversation and push through to the other side, knowing that we are moving towards betterment. Like I just wanted to say that.
Okay. So tune in next week. Tune in next week while we get our panelists together and come to you with this this also important topic, this family discussion. All right, family. Good show tonight, Hanifa.
Oh, yes. Yes. We started late, but yes, thank you for the conversation as usual, sis.
You gave me some things to think about, more than one thing to think about. So thank you.
Well, we're gonna discuss more on the panel next week. So you guys make sure you tune in at 8 p.m. Next Monday. We're gonna have some men and women here, different faces, to have this conversation a little bit more in depth. So see you guys then.
And share with others so they too can join us next week as well. All right, family. Take care of each other out there. Peace and love.